Hold on. Now I'm recording. Okay, but you're not there.
The host has another. Where'd you send this thing?
This meeting is being recorded by the host
Hello,
or
my
a
friends in
participant. Got
Bitcoin
it.
and crypto land. My name is
Okay,
Mikhail
now I
Woodward.
can't hear you.
I
Hold on.
am Crypto
Okay.
Crypto, the host of the Beer Money Show. And this cat that's about to come on, he and I have had quite an ordeal of the last 30, 40 minutes for me to be able to record something and get onto the same kind of program that we can also talk and hear each other. I'm not sure if I can hear you. Say something, brother.
Test.
Yeah, I'm not hearing you.
No.
Let me turn it up here.
How about now?
1 second. I might have to do this. 1 second. I might have to plug in some earphones into this. So I'm just going to pause. I'm going to just pause people 1 second. Okay, so golly geez, this has been a challenge. But again, my name is Mikhail Woodward, known as Crypto. I'm the host of the Beer Money Show. And with all the things we've been going through for about 40 minutes, I finally have this cat on here, Stevo, and we met at Bticoin 2021 in Miami. He was not able to be there this year, but I asked if you'd come on the show. And I'm actually in a new kind of space where I'm recording via Zoom because he didn't have, I usually do Instagram and I want to do YouTube, but not enough you guys are following it yet for me to do live. I like live because I don't have to edit, because two things, I'm busy, I'm lazy, and I like an organic conversation. But Stevo, thank you for coming on the show. How are you doing today, my friend?
Oh, good. I'm so happy to be with you. Thank you.
You know, it's because of you that we're actually doing all this. And the learning curve was 40 minutes, but we're here. So I forgot that I was trying to record, which we may or may not be able to cut off. I'll have to see if I have to edit that, but I could not hear you with the microphone until I got these headphones. So I don't know what you're using that you can hear me, but that's pretty awesome, unless you have earbuds in or something.
No.
No? You're just using your phone, right?
Yeah.
That's why, because I'm using the computer and you're on the phone. I could not figure out how to record from my phone. I really could. But we figured it out. We're here. As you can see, I got a new hat called Crypto, just from Crypto Dad. Not the show, just I'm a dad who's into crypto. But we'll get into things, but kind of give people your background and how you got started in crypto and where you are to today.
Cool. That's, yeah. 2008, got to help out on the Ron Paul campaign. 2012, got to do the same. 2012, a bunch of folks were talking about crypto, and I at that conference at Bticoin 2019 in San Francisco, I argued that I presented that Bticoin came out of Ron Paul's 2008 campaign. In fact, I believe that is part of the origin of Bticoin.
That's interesting.
Yeah. 2012. I got to help out with Ron Paul 2012, bunch of states. Ended up back in New York with some friends from that campaign. One of them would not shut up about Bitcoin. He kept talking Bitcoin. Another guy said, let's start an exchange. And we started, a few of us got together, started an exchange. And it was the coolest thing. It was called New York Bitcoin Center. You could walk in with cash, walk out with Bitcoin. We were right next to the New York Stock Exchange, 40 Broad Street.
Wow.
There were some cool documentaries made about that time. One of them's Banking and Bitcoin. Banking on Bitcoin. And that talks about, we inspired some regulation that I don't care for very much, but we were very in your face with the exchange. And we some days we'd have more people in our pit. We'd go out on the street sometimes with our pit. We'd have a trading pit outside the New York Stock Exchange. Sometimes we had more people in that pit on the street than there would be traders on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange.
Wow.
We have 1,000 people through the doors some days. Then a bunch of cool crypto activity in New York at that time. After a few years of that, West Coast, a bunch of more cool crypto stuff, because in New York it kind of got banned.
Sure.
turned into a desert. And latest helping people launch Bitcoin projects. I help with lots of different projects, but especially Bitcoin projects.
And don't you have some books?
Oh, yeah. Lots of books. I've been writing like close to 20 years now, books close to 20 years. And two most recent books are on the health mandates. So a book called Face Mask in One Lesson, and it's kind of like how to live life like a VIP and never wear a face mask, basically. So like never
I like
ever
it.
for any reason. It's a good one. And another one, Face Mask Hurt Kids. It's a deep dive on the science behind masking. And that's like, so it's like a 500-page book, but everything you need out of it, you could get in about 20 minutes of effort. It's laid out in a way that makes it like real easy to hack, and gives you some like basic principles of anyone. You read some of the basic principles in there, and then anyone can just kind of walk from there and say, okay, I get the basic principles. I can use my common sense to the rest. So Face Master Kids is kind of a cool book. Then Bitcoin Manifesto. Do I have a copy around me? No. Bitcoin Manifesto. That's, I think 2014, then 2017, I re-released it. And that's like a free market take on Bitcoin that I'm still super proud of. Then a bunch of other books.
Well, I know that you and I believe in the same kind of thing. We know that taxation is theft, and that inflation is really is another type of theft, and that basically the government has been stealing from us left and right, and over and over, and people just don't understand how our fiat system works, especially since we uncoupled from gold in 1971. And even though part of that was necessary because you had other countries who were taking our gold and silver certificates, the dollar, and they were trying to raid the bank, as it were, trying to take out all the gold. I kind of understood why they did it, but getting into where we're into now in this whole system with printing money and now I just forgot I know you're going to say it, but and I talk about it all the time. There's another term that we use for the monetary system that we're in with the printing. But anyways, do you want to talk about any of that and why people like you and me have decided to opt into Bitcoin because of it?
Totally. I found the book, by the way.
Bitcoin nice.
Manifesto.
There you go. I need to get it. I need to get a copy of that, my friend.
It's an enjoyable. Let's make that happen. It's an enjoyable, quick, enjoyable read. Okay, so my passion for Bitcoin's very much ideological. There's lots of people who are, what's the price going to be today? What's the price tomorrow? And I have not looked at the price for a while. And my grandkids are going to get my Bitcoin, and that's the game plan. And no matter how great it gets, it's not going to. It will not be changing my life. It's for my grandkids. So that's where I'm at with that. That's generational wealth.
I agree, but you can you be like Michael Saylor's or other people? I would, I remember the girl I was dating last year said she was going to sell her Bitcoin to buy a house. I said, don't ever do it. Borrow against your Bitcoin and buy the house, because you're using fiat that's going to go down, continue to go down to get an asset, whereas your Bitcoin's always going to go up, and you don't have to lose it. You can keep your keys and your Bitcoin, and essentially it's going to pay for itself once it goes up. Any loan that you take against it, right? Or maybe you sell some Satoshis by that time to be able to recoup.
A friend of mine, I had there's a venture fund I'm involved in, and in the venture fund, the original plan was to borrow against that people could borrow against their Bitcoin to enter the fund. And I thought about that, and a friend said to me, you don't need to be playing those games with your Bitcoin. And like that month, I think it was February 2020, we were talking about that, and the next month it's 3K or something, or I don't remember, it was 5K, and it was just kind of a reminder that
it was. Yeah, I think it actually touched 3,600, because I remember going, oh, I need some money, but 5K was about where it was resting for a while. Yeah.
So when something is volatile, leverage can make it a difficult investment to hold on to. And,
Sure.
part of the nature of Bitcoin or owning gold similarly, part of it is to escape from the fractional reserve system and to say, I'm going to have these assets and they're not going to be leveraged. And I'm going to kind of keep myself away from the nonsense happening in banks. So that's kind of like a nice thing that happens with gold or with Bitcoin. And from where I stand, that's an ideal. Totally, you can borrow against your Bitcoin, and there's like more and more opportunities constantly, and it makes sense for a lot of people. I think where I stand, it makes sense to just leave it unleveraged.
So you're like an OG hodler, and the fact that, like you said, it's for, you didn't even say it's for your kids. You said it's for your grandkids.
But kids aren't getting
it. But you're like generational wealth that's going down, which I like, because I'm also into whole life insurance, and that's another way of infinite banking, personal banking, that you can leverage your own stuff and not be in with the regular bank. But you did say a term that I was trying to remember a little bit ago, fractional reserve system, and that we're in this system that continues to lend money, for every $100 it gets, like you and I put in the bank, it's going to lend out 99, or maybe sometimes it's 90. It's supposed to be 90, but it's really more like 99. But that's, people don't understand that the concept of fractional reserve banking. Where do you think right now with, I personally, and just feel free wherever this conversation goes, but for me, what's been going on with these trillions of dollars being printed, and now you get into the Ukraine, where, we know there was more of them, but the Clintons, the Obamas, definitely the Bidens, there's others, the Utah governor, whatever, they've all been laundering money through Ukraine for decades, really. And so this is just a distraction to get away from what they're doing here and trying to enslave the people, I would say. So, and if you look at it, they were accusing Donald Trump of, he's going to start World War III. Didn't even come close because he wasn't baited into it. But who does it? Biden, because that's what they wanted all the time. They want to be able to cover their tracks and be able to offset things to where they're covering the petrodollar in the fractional reserve system, along with the IMF, to be able to keep NATO and UN and that kind of stuff going. So I just opened a wide door for you to talk about anything you want to talk about, because I'm sure you could talk about it for a long time.
Totally. I in my early 20s, I got to spend some time working in former Czechoslovakia, right next to the Ukraine. I got to spend some time in the Ukraine, got to spend some time in Russia. I love people in the Ukraine. I love folks in Russia. And, wars are very sad. There's no, and that land's contested land. It's gone on a long time.
Yep.
And the idea that America has so few problems that we should be worrying about whether the Russian-speaking Ukrainians should be part of Russia, or should the Russian-speaking, I mean, it's, the culture is, it is entirely arbitrary where that boundary is drawn. So
yeah, we're supposed to open up our boundary in the south and let everything happen, but here we're fighting over there like that. You can't let this boundary go. And I'm like, what? I mean, this administration, it shows you how crazy the radical left is, that they have this double standard. And we're not gonna even really care about our own people and our own, what's going on here in our own backyard, but we're gonna go put our nose in across the world. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Total distraction. No, it's total distraction. And this is there's, so the question could kind of arise then, what's a distraction from? Is it a distraction from monetary concerns? Is it meant to just perpetuate something going on in DC that maybe no one's noticing? And, there can be all kinds of arguments for what it's a distraction from. Surely you print so many trillions of dollars, you got to distract a little bit from that. And more, the printing of the money is talked about so importantly, and it's vital. How we've just printed too much money, no question. But
yes,
there's an additional issue that we shut down society for 2 years, and it wasn't an entire shutdown, but there were some like very bad habits developed that are going to take a long time to kind of wind out of. And, you know, it's, what's work look like? What's food look like? What's paying rent look like? All these different things. Some like really bad habits were developed, and Bitcoin comes out of Austrian school economists. And there's this Austrian school economists would be very careful to say, well, what happens today affects what happens 2 years from now, not what happens tomorrow.
Sure.
That there's this gigantic supply chain that's been impacted. And this, in addition to the money supply, there's been like a lot of damage to the economy. And, you know, the best thing the government can do right now is to just like be quiet for like 4 years and do nothing, and just
step back.
Let the people just, you know, let Mikhail and his life figure out, how's my life look from here? How's it been impacted? What do I do next? Instead of, well, you got to get 3 vaccines and you've got to get the 18 boosters, and only then can you do a certain kind of jobs, Mikhail. Right? When you get into all this stuff, you're just putting prohibitions on people from doing engage in their natural desire to work. And these are important things that the Ukraine seems to be a distraction from.
I agree, because I mean, if you think about it, the only way that when you overprinted money, or you're having a hard time with finances, food, any of this kind of stuff, which I think was all planned and man-made, it was more to get our freedoms and to get us in line, right? I mean, if you talk about it, they said we're going to do this for 3 weeks. The shutdowns for 3 weeks, and 3 weeks is 21 days. 21 days creates a new habit. But then we go to 2 years, and now they're trying to extend things. It just shows you that they're like, once they get some of your freedoms, and then they're going to keep it. And I think it was Franklin who said that, you know, and as I'm going to paraphrase, but anyone who's willing to give up their liberties for safety will lose both, and is not worthy of either one, right? And that's really where we are. But if you talk about traditionally throughout history, those who are in charge, when they're having problems with monetary things and the people, they start wars. It always benefits them to start a war. Well, I think the first non-war war that we've had was COVID, and it was worldwide. And they thought that they could get more power and get things, but they realized it backfired. So now, after printing all this money, especially since everybody's tied to the petrodollar, to the US dollar, which is in such a high inflation rate that it's spiraling down. And that's why inflation, you've lost the value of the dollar. So now something that, like, let's just say a car was $5,000 and now it's, you know, $35,000, $40,000 to get into a good car. Or if you bought a house and it was $25,000 to $30,000 so many years ago, now the average median's $400K or so, which is not in California, but throughout the country. It's not because the values of those things went up, it's because the value of the dollar went down. And so now this distraction is this war is because, oh, we have to figure out something else to really be able to compensate for the mess and the chaos that they created, right? And that they're distracting from what they're actually benefiting from, because most of the money that was printed didn't go to people like you and me. It went to, I mean, there are even, I've heard of celebrities who've gotten it, but it's all the big corporate commercial, and even Pfizer and all these different, I mean, CNN, you could go down the list. They all got money.
It's probably good. It's probably good for people at a time such as this to ask themselves this question of, you know, what's government doing right now? How are they ruining things around me? How do I benefit myself as much as possible? I think there are some regular folks who ended up with money out of this. Very bad policies happening. And, you know, I like to go very big picture on things like this. And I like to, you know, drill down to individuals too. When we talk about Ukraine, it's hard to say, how's your listener, what's your listener going to do about Ukraine? Or when we talk about money printing, you know, what's your listener going to do about money printing? And this is, you spend too much time on the high level, then it almost encourages a person to be inactive, because, you can, go have some beers, argue about it, but at the end of the day, you've changed nothing. And a beautiful thing about Bitcoin is really that it empowers the individual. And, there's, you and I we can go start a bank this weekend, and no one using Bitcoin, and no one's going to ask, what's our capitalization rate? Someone might ask, but it won't be a government telling us, no, you can't do it. No one's going to ask, where'd you go to college? Who's your family? And show me your licenses. And do you have money transmitter licenses in 36 states yet? And right, these questions, they won't be relevant to people who understand that there's market regulations that happen naturally in a marketplace and make a marketplace better. They have nothing to do with the government regulations. And similarly, a reason I write about face masks in terms of the lockdowns, I think it's so important to be able to look for ways that you can stand out and exert,
Freedom.
you stand upon your values, stand upon your freedom. And this is exactly as you say, freedom. This, I write, like in Face Masks in One Lesson, for example, I describe in many situations, I go through, I don't know, 50 situations, maybe, for like a dentist, the barber, to doctor, school, yada, 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 grocery store, of course. If someone's trying to force you into a face mask, what do you do? How do you get through that door without it? And the more people can figure out how to never wear a mask again, the more they can take advantage of this opportunity. And 2020 has been an opportunity. It's been miserable in so many ways, but there's an opportunity too. And it's an opportunity to numerous things, to divide these kinds of the have-nots about freedom from the haves in your life. Say, I want to be around more of these haves. Also to say, I'm not going to be part of that group. I'm not going to let those silly rules apply to me. I'm going to stick with what I know to be valuable and consistent in my life. And this is, the more we can, use face masks, use Bitcoin, use our daily walk through the world in this way, the more we benefit ourselves individually. And I might not change the world overnight. That may be out of my capacity. I may not be able to impact what happens in the White House overnight, but I know in the world around me, in the sphere of influence I have around me, I can impact how others operate. And I don't have to force anyone to do something. I may just simply be doing something different than others. And at some point, people look and say, what that guy's doing does actually work. We're going to be more like him. And that does ripple through society, and it's very positive. Bitcoin has this kind of role.
Yeah, I hope so. Because it's funny that you get in the mask. I've literally been maskless the entire time, but I've had people attack me in stores. Managers won't sell to me, all kinds of stuff when I call them on it. I had recordings too, but unfortunately my phone slipped into a river. But it was just, it's bizarre to me when I used to work at a company where OSHA rules say masks have no effect in any of that, but then all of a sudden everybody's told to wear masks. But think about who benefited from all the sales of those masks. And we're talking about people who are talking about, oh, plastic bags and straws are no good, but we got masks. I see masks on the street and all kinds of stuff. Like, if people don't really put it together that it's a profit deal, that the vaccines are a profit deal, then I think that, and they try and shut you down with conspiracy theorists. But here we are, and these are facts, and they're just trying to control things and more with the bank. And then you get into where we're doing CDBCs now. So maybe you could talk about that, because I think, as you say, masks and all that kind of stuff are freedom. It's a way to stand for your rights and kind of protest if you're not wearing one. And I'm not harming anybody else, because if you're wearing a mask and it's microscopic and it was there, you can smell someone's perfume or food, it already was there. So anyways, but the long and the short are, it's freedom, but Bitcoin is freedom. So Bitcoin, it offers this way to get out of the system and not be pegged down. And I think that's why they're trying to regulate it so hard, but they don't understand how to do it.
Yeah. And this, there's, in addition to regulating it, okay. Let me say two things about regulating. In There's
Well, your
people who
phone's
love
moving
Trump.
everywhere.
Oh, forgive me.
Yeah, yeah.
There's people who love Trump. There's people who hate Trump. There's probably an earthquake. Who knows?
Yeah,
There's people who love Trump. There's people who hate Trump. And when people talk about politicians, I like to speak about concretes as much as possible. And
Sure.
there's a way Trump, when he came into office, he said some negative things about Bitcoin. And if you look at his record, the way it impacted me, for example, there was a time in the Obama administration, and it ended up being named, Operation Choke Point. This is like this little known story that the Obama administration used the FDIC, which is a banking regulator,
Yeah.
used the FDIC to stop like porn shops from banking, gun shops from banking, Bitcoin companies from banking. And banks were told, if you bank these people, we're going to regulate you harder. We're going to audit you harder. The choice is yours if you want to bank them or not. So a lot of banks would just, if you said the word Bitcoin in a bank, your account would get shut down. It'd be crazy. And it wouldn't just be your account or that one account you accessed. It would be people you know, people you do business with. It would ripple. It would be very ugly.
Yes.
So
It's still going on. I have a story about that, but go ahead.
Trump put an end to that.
Well, this last weekend I tried to buy, and they're like, "Oh, you're trying to buy with crypto. We can't allow that." And my bank, I'm like, it was $100. I'm like, let me do what I want. And they're like, "Oh, we don't allow crypto." And it was Chase Bank, and I was like, "BS! You guys are buying this on your own. You just don't want the common people to be able to be ahead." But go ahead.
It's bad.
Yeah.
No, it's bad. Trump got rid of it for a time. I expected Biden would bring it back, and he did. So no matter what nice things, or no matter what bad things or nice things Trump said about Bitcoin,
Yes,
he, in my personal life, he made it possible to bank in a way that I couldn't previously. He made my life so much simpler concretely.
Yes.
President Obama did not do that. He made it just evil. But there's something to note here. By Obama banning Bitcoin, practically debanking Bitcoin companies, he forced Bitcoin companies into using Bitcoin in this hostile environment, effectively for what Bitcoin was intended for.
Yes.
Trump, by getting out of the way, allowed Bitcoin companies to get comfortable in the regulatory environment. So even though Trump was friendly to Bitcoin, the net result was that big companies ended up getting comfy. So right now, the regulatory environment is such that you could really cut off serious Bitcoin transactions through US regulation in a way in 2015 you couldn't have, because Bitcoin companies weren't friendly enough with the banks for this to be able to happen. Right now, regulators could really impact how the Bitcoin economy functions. And that won't necessarily be bad. It'll push us back into this realization that Bitcoin is hostile to the interest of the government, and that government is necessarily going to be hostile to the interest of Bitcoin. So government's going to push all kinds of other fake cryptocurrencies on us.
Yes.
In an effort to convince us not to do Bitcoin.
Yeah, CDBCs. I mean, that's just the way of them. I mean, technically, they had a bill signed about this 2 years ago that was supposed to go into in action last January, if my understanding is correct. You're aware of that, right?
I didn't follow the specifics of when it was supposed to go into place.
It was January of last year, but it was slow to roll out for some reason. And now they're all, I mean, when they talk about, oh, we're working on this and that, you know that when they're announcing it to the public, they've already been working on it for a long time. We're the last people they tell. You know, and the only reason they do that is to prime you. We're gonna prime you. We want to get you ready for things. I mean,
I like what you just said about priming you. And when there's depressing news in the media, I'm very careful about sharing it with others. Unless there's like a real careful reason to share it with someone else, I don't share depressing headlines, because I don't want to prime people. I don't want to be part of it. I share the headlines that help people feel good about their potential to change things in the world.
I like that. I can't say that I don't do either. I mean, like, I've talked about Ukraine, and I'm going to talk about the fact that this is a man-made, trumped-up war, to use the word, by the Biden administration. They wanted it. They're making it happen. but my heart goes out to the people of Ukraine, and
Oh, yeah.
even the soldiers of Russia. I mean, the fact that you get people are trying, they're trying to ban Russia and do all this stuff. All they're going to do is hurt the Russian people more and cause bread lines, shortages and that kind of stuff. And why is that okay? Because they're Russian? They're not bad people. We just the fact is you have all these puppet masters who are leaders of countries who are the elite, as we've been talking about, and they think they can do whatever they want because they have the money and the power, and you and I don't. That's why I think Bitcoin and the circular economy, if we can use it, is important.
Something happened in Russia that was quite noteworthy. That February 24th, the war in the Ukraine began, and it had a negative effect on the Russian ruble. Several days before that, the Russian ruble started to fall. And the Putin tied gold to the ruble.
Yes.
And this pegging seemed to have an impact on the economy of the ruble's price is now above the February 24th price.
Yes.
That was by April 7th or April 8th. I looked again. And this is notable because sanctions from the US have always been very powerful. And this is the first time I've seen sanctions fail. And these are far more powerful sanctions than we've ever used, to my knowledge. And even in World War II, there was trade happening that is now being prevented, which is interesting. So the U.S. financial system has been one of the most kind of the regulatory environment, the anti-freedom aspects of our regulatory environment, the financial system, have been one of the most important exports of the U.S. since the end of World War II. People have all kinds of other arguments about, how the U.S. has been important in the world. I think this is one of the most important ways the U.S. has been important in the world. And that's essentially to limit financial freedom, to say, if you desire privacy in your financial matters, you must be a drug dealer, you must be a human trafficker, you must be a terrorist. And to think that this is such a powerful impact to have come from the U.S. government is so troubling to me that we allow a government like this to exist. But that's the reality of the situation. And it's notable to watch hegemony of the U.S. government and the ability to give sanctions fall apart, because sanctions are essentially an act of war. They're not a peaceful thing to do to a people.
No.
As you talked about, it creates harm for people, misery for people who are not involved in the altercation in Ukraine.
Yeah, and I mean, if you think about it, Donald Trump was talking about going back to the gold standard, and I think that's kind of why they stole the election, whether you believe that it happened or not. But there's all kinds of evidence for it, and there's still court cases about it. But the fact that you have now Putin has tied the ruble to gold, I think, is fascinating.
Mikhail, the elections are not legitimate elections.
Yeah.
They did not. You brought it up, and I don't
please.
want it to just hang there in the air embarrassingly in any way. They're not legitimate elections. I've had the joy of working in around politics constantly.
Yes.
Since a young age. I grew up on the south side of Chicago. It's our hobby to be involved in politics in Chicago, dirty politics. And I've been through so many election counting processes. Even in 2004 in Russia, I was an election observer. In 2017 in France, I was able to observe the election process. So in the United States and many states throughout the world, I've observed interesting, often accountable election processes, sometimes totally garbage election processes. And what happened November 3rd, 2020 is just like something the US government would not allow in one of our vassal states.
Yes.
And total hypocrisy on that topic. Can I prove with the knowledge I have that it was a stolen election? No, but that's not how an election works. You're supposed to be able to audit it and to demonstrate how accurate it was, and that is not happening. Just like follow the science on the face mask, total junk. Just like follow the economics on the U.S. dollar, total junk. We are being told follow the election practices. Listen to the media on the 2020 elections, total junk.
I completely agree. That's the problem, is propaganda and indoctrination have happened, and that the media, I mean, it makes me, I was raised to trust it, but now you go back and you look at it, and that's always been the way to get the people. It's been going on, since before Rome, but Rome was doing it when they were, um, you know, taking off parts of their money system, so they would clip it, and
Yeah.
every time they were doing that and stealing from the people, that hurt the people, and is really the fall of Rome. And so we've seen that happen with Germany, with England. You could go through our time in different countries and different wars that it's happened, and even to the U.S. And so I love where you're going with that, because I know, I'm telling you, brother, we could talk forever because we have the same kind of mindset. But unfortunately, you get to a point where you get older and you realize, man, this is all bullshit, that they're just controlling and manipulating us, letting us think that we have some kind of freedom, and that we have a part of the process. And I did think that even though I knew that our system was corrupted, I still thought it was the best system in the world. And I thought that at least there's some fairness to it. And that was just debunked and shown. The one thing that I think that the 2020 election is good about is that if you have seen it and you are not aware that this is just a hoax and they're going to do what they want to do, no, regardless of what the people want, then you're still living with rose-colored glasses, to be kind.
Yes. Yeah. So this, when you talk about clipping money, when you talk about stealing elections, and I think it's good to say, how does a listener protect himself? How does Mikhail protect himself, from these things? And maybe you can't protect the U.S. dollar, but you can figure out in your own life, how to have metals around, how to have cryptocurrencies that you understand to be stable around you. And I think Bitcoin is of the various projects in terms of, what's established, what's credible. Bitcoin seems to be the most among those by far. And to have this monetary purpose, that's exciting to me. But who knows if monetarily will be important. As you were speaking, I just grabbed two books. The book is not so important, Man, Economy, and the States, but the author is named Murray Rothbard. And I just want to make sure your listeners know that name, Murray Rothbard, who really wonderful economist, very heavy hitting kind of guy, who writes about power, writes about money, libertarian thinker, Austrian economist, dead now. Another one named Ludwig von Mises. These two, many others, many economists write about money. Mises writes so powerfully about socialism by 1920, 1921, something like that. Yep. He had described why socialism will always fail. And a student of his, Friedrich von Hayek, won the Nobel Prize, adding to this kind of description, and others in 1973. Rothbard very potently writes about the history of money. And these are two kinds of nice economists to get deeper into, to better understand Bitcoin if one wants to understand that monetary history more. Yes. And in terms of elections, you can't protect the whole U.S. vote on your own overnight. In your own community, you can simply be saying, how do I figure out how to be an election observer? I'm going to spend, I care enough about the election in my community that I'm going to call the Republican Party, I'm going to call the Democratic Party, I'm going to look for an election observation organization, I'm going to call the county clerk, I'm going to say, I want to spend 12 hours that day in the counting room, or in the election room, the polling place, observing what's going to happen. On election day, as the counting process is happening, I want to be present there. What's the paperwork I need to be present? And you can't change the world in that moment, perhaps, but you're being part of the system, observing it, growing your muscle in that moment. And I think it's really important when we talk about like the evil in the world, how does the person listening right now change the world around them, impact the world around them without worrying about the White House, but in their neck of the woods, in their home, in their family, in their own life, what are the changes they can make?
I totally agree with you. And I love that you brought this up, because I'm involved with a local organization where recently a gentleman who's been on, I think it was AM 590, But actually I have a thing. Hold on one second. I'm going to stand up out of the camera for 1 second. But his name was Don Dix. And Don Dix basically was an activist. And he basically, he had a whole show that he did. It was, conversations with Jen and Don on, I think it was AM 590, but he also did some other stuff. And he did this community thing where he was always active in trying to get people to understand politics happens locally. And if you get involved, if you're concerned about your family, yourself, your children, especially, then you need to get involved locally. And there's a lot of people who have taken up the banner since he passed away unexpectedly 2 months ago, God rest his soul. But that you can be involved. And the biggest thing that he talked about, and the people that have gone up, I have a friend, SJ, she's kind of taken up the mantle. She was like his right-hand woman. And and basically it's about going and observing. Like you can run local or find someone and support local, but go and observe and be involved in that. And I think if you can do that and write letters, call your representatives locally and at the state and Congress, Senate level, especially right now, because there's 10 things that they're trying to push in California. And if they do, we're going to lose all rights for us and our children, whether you can choose a vax or anything else, mask. They're trying to push that stuff right now without the common people knowing. And let's see if I can find something on that. But I think Bitcoin and being involved in that kind of stuff is important, because most people, the reason they keep you so entertained, and I love entertainment, I grew up in it, I have a degree in it, but they keep you so entertained is so that they can just push things how they want and you're not aware of it.
And this, as you talk about the schools, the kids, it is, if you're really into protecting your finances with Bitcoin, if you're really into, making sure votes are legitimate, if you're really concerned about making sure they're not pulling the wool over your eyes with COVID, you should be just as concerned, not with critical race theory necessarily, not with shaping the schools necessarily, but with bringing the kids home and having them be educated at home. And I know for some that's kind of a radical idea, but this more and more, it's becoming clear that the more you interact with the established system that exists, the more opportunity there is for them to take advantage of you, of the world around you, of your family. And there's this neat kind of value to saying, I'm not going to let basically some of the worst folks you can imagine in society, I'm not going to let them spend 8 hours a day with my kids. I'm going to come up with a different way of educating my kids. And that's a very attractive thing to keep in mind as well. As many ways as possible of saying, how do I insulate my family from the evils around us?
Gotcha. I was trying to bring up one thing that I'll tell people is, if you go to wethepeopleconvention.org, is a good way for you to keep advised on what's going on. They do a weekly podcast. They're out of Midwest. I was trying to find something right now. He's talking a lot about, I don't know what your thoughts are on Elon Musk and buying Twitter, but he's talking about that. But I was trying to find the 10 things that they're trying to pass here in California, that the People's Convoy that had left California and went to DC, which was never really talked about or televised, even though the Freedom Convoy was up in Canada, but they went around DC for like 2 weeks without shutting it down. And then they came back because of what was going on in California. And I think that that's really, really important for us to understand about what's going on. But I don't know. I'm realizing the time. If you can stay on, let me know if you got to go, because I'm trying to respect your time, because I know that we had a scheduled time. But I could talk with you all day. I know we could keep talking about.
How much time are you thinking? How much time would be?
It's just up to you. It's really up to you. 5-10 minutes, whatever.
I could go a few minutes after 6 right now. If you'd like that, I could go a few minutes after 6.
So just tell me in a synopsis, like, I feel like there's a passion there for you, but kind of talk to me about where you feel we're headed with crypto, maybe where you'd like to see us headed with crypto. I mean, honestly, where you started is an amazing story and where you're at now, but essentially, are you still buying Bitcoin and hodling? Are you were obviously, we met last year at the conference and didn't get to go this year because you were doing something else, but how active are you in the Bitcoin and crypto community? And where do you see things going now when you get like, okay, I love that Michael Saylor was there and he's just, he's like this new samurai kind of godfather of Bitcoin. And he's like, just buy Bitcoin and hold, right? Buy Bitcoin and hold. But then you get Kevin O'Leary's there, and Kevin O'Leary wants all this regulation. And if you look at it, I'm not sure. I don't know if the two concepts coincide. I mean, and I'm not against that he was there. That was cool. But I'm like, it was even interesting to me that the Bitcoin people brought him in because I'm like, when he's talking about it, he's really talking about. I wrote this down. My buddy and I were talking about it in a text, so I got to tell you something. But it's like, is he like when he was talking about it? His points are like it. He wants it to be a reserve currency, and that the world, is backed by the world dollar, right? So, is it another fiat backed by another fiat? I mean, I'm just trying to understand what his reasoning is, because it seems to go against what Bitcoin and crypto are about.
Yeah, he has no concept. He has no concept what he's talking about. Or the concept that he is talking about is how to undermine Bitcoin if he does recognize. And he's a very smart man. So
Yeah.
my guess is that there's something a little sinister there. But it's important to here. Bitcoin has neat cypherpunk roots, right? It's privacy.
Yes.
I spoke at DEF CON, it's in Las Vegas, DEF CON in Las Vegas, like a hacker convention, on the importance of Bitcoin being seen as something for a tool for the cypherpunks more than it is a tool for InfoSec, for example. InfoSec is a group of computer folks concerned with protecting companies from hackers, you could say. Cypherpunks are hackers, you could say.
Yeah.
So these are same techniques used with kind of different purposes. You have Austrian economists. I spoke about Rothbard. I spoke about Mises.
Yeah.
You have.
By the way, I was going to mention. Keep your thought. I just wanted to show you the one thing. I mentioned infinite banking concept. So for anyone who knows, go read that book about Nelson Nash and becoming your own banker. Whole life insurance and Bitcoin, I think, will create generational wealth and get you out of being poor. But don't buy term life. But anyways, go on with what you're saying.
Thank you.
Because that's all Austrian economics. So I'm really an Austrian economics guy. But go ahead.
The Bitcoin at its roots is this very nerdy, passionate thing that is, it's Austrian economics.
Yeah.
And cypherpunk. It's not InfoSec and banker. And the bigger any company in crypto gets, this simply happens. Coinbase has made kind of a little bit of a return from this, but the bigger any company in crypto gets, the more it gets away from its crypto roots.
Yes.
The more you have people at the company who, above a certain size, they don't know what a wallet is. They definitely don't have any Bitcoin. They really don't know what the company does. They're just doing their 9 to 5. And it's cool if the janitors in a company have that role. And janitors, there can be CEOs who are janitors. Their job is to just take over what a really impressive person built, and to just keep it going. And so in Bitcoin, some people have a very hard time distinguishing between the impressive cypherpunks or Austrian school economists and the InfoSec or the bankers. And that's the difference between creator and janitor, between innovator and caretaker. And
Interesting.
You cannot turn to the caretaker, Kevin O'Leary, as innovative as the man may seem. You cannot turn to him and say, how do I make this an even more special version of what it is? How do I stay true to the white paper? How do I stay true to the concerns on which this was founded? How do I make sense more out of what Satoshi put in that first block?
Yeah. Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
If you're looking at Kevin O'Leary, you're looking to a janitor.
How
Janitor
about
can't
Michael
know.
Saylor?
Different person, very different person.
But do you think
Yes.
he's also a janitor, or is he
Nope.
more?
No.
No. So okay.
He's, I don't. It would require a lot more discussion with the man, but
Sure.
I think it seems very clear to me that he gets the white paper.
I think so too.
Yeah, and this is right now more than buy and hodl, which is just very smart.
Yeah.
And maybe your listeners can also be thinking, how do I get into Bitcoin?
Yeah. Get off zero.
Professionally.
Okay.
How do I work in Bitcoin? How do I do something in any one of these companies? And then throughout that time that they're getting into Bitcoin, I'd like them to be asking themselves, how do I start my own company doing the exact same thing that this company does, or something similar, or anything I'm learning right now, anything I have specialty in? Because in Bitcoin right now, there's very little talent, very, very low talent. The bar to entry is very, very low. If you can go work for free for 6 months, it would benefit you to do that. You'd have everything in 6 months. You'd have so much of what you need to do to go start something very similar. And the Bitcoin industry needs lots of competition. That's how an industry thrives. And what these Kevin O'Leary's want is they want, or who knows, all these entities. I shouldn't pick on Kevin O'Leary. I shouldn't.
No, it's just I just brought up the two because they were, to me, they were two of the biggest speakers and seemed juxtaposition to each other. And I don't know if you got to watch any of it. And I'm like, I mean, at first I was like, Kevin O'Leary, okay. Anytime you see someone who was doing FUD before and they were against it and now they're buying in, I think the FUD was so that they could buy in when it was a better price, and they got a lot before the people, and now they're talking about it so that everybody else will buy and the price will go up. But there was a huge juxtaposition between the mindset between these two speakers that were at this largest conference of Bitcoin people in the world.
I used to teach English outside of the U.S. I got to teach Shakespeare, British literature and American literature. It was wonderful. And like these students, they have studied English for like 13 years before they got to me. And this had nothing to do with Bitcoin. It has something to do with the word you just used, juxtapositioning.
Yes.
And I said, if you can pull off the word juxtapositioning in a sentence to an English speaker, they'll just think you're the smartest person ever. And
okay. So do I come out smart or stupid?
No, smart. It's good. It's good.
Good.
But it's less cool when you're an English speaker. When you're a non-native English speaker, and right, like a Slovak kid uses that in a sentence with you, you're like, that's
I was raised, my mom's an English teacher, so that's that's my reason and excuse.
But these people you speak of, they don't care about that you can change the world. Well, I don't want to pick on the guy again, but there's some people out there, and they tend to be more janitor types, more banker types. They don't care about you can use Bitcoin to change the world. They don't care about the technology. They don't care about competition in the industry. They're thinking about, how can I use government to have as little competition as possible and make as much money for me as possible in this situation?
Yeah.
And listen, you brought up Elon Musk before.
Yeah.
There's a professor from Hillsdale College. His name's Burton Folsom. So he wrote a book maybe 10 years ago that talks about robber barons. In the 1880s, 1890s, there was this idea that everyone who did well in an industry they'd be a billionaire today. Everyone who did well in an industry was a robber baron. They were stealing from the people. Yep. And there's truth to them stealing. There's some truth to that, but Folsom makes an important distinction that is lost in history, that just because they're rich does not make them evil by any means.
No.
How did they make that money? And
yes.
he makes the distinction between a market entrepreneur and a political entrepreneur. And he says the political entrepreneur, because of government largesse, because of some friend who's a politician, because someone who's able to give them a contract, they did steal money from the
Yes,
people to make themselves
100%.
rich. And a
100%.
political entrepreneur does something, or a market entrepreneur does something different. It's, a businessman starts a business and makes profits in the marketplace by helping people solve a problem.
Yes.
So there's businessmen out there that made none of their money from government, all of their money from simply helping people with their problems. And this is something that we should really praise. Now, Elon Musk, he's dabbled in government more than I'd like. And I think that should be denounced, and people should say that that's no good. And he spent time not using government funds. And I think that should be praised. What's he doing with Twitter? I don't know. And it's exciting. And
it is.
Come
Well,
on,
the
it's
fact,
a
the
better
fact
direction than where we were a week ago.
so I'm going to say the reason that he denounced Bitcoin in the first place and said, oh, it's not friendly to the ecosystem, whatever you want to call it, global warming crap. You know why he said that? It's because he was getting money from the Biden administration, and Biden administration was against Bitcoin at that time. They were. If you go look at it, they're like, no, we're not going to allow this. Now things have kind of changed, and now you see things coming back, and now he's like back to Bitcoin, which he never sold in the first place, just wasn't accepting it, and then now he's doing this whole thing with Twitter, possibly about free speech. I don't know. So it's interesting because I've never been a fanboy of Elon Musk, but I'm always paying attention to what's going on because it definitely affects crypto and Bitcoin, and now freedom of speech. I mean, when he talks, people listen. I mean, it's more than Warren Buffett or anyone else now. It's Elon Musk. I mean, I wish people listen to Michael Saylor as much as they do Elon Musk, but it seems like he's maybe coming back on the same page. I don't know. I'm hoping for the same thing.
This competition between companies, at the very least, that's good. That's good for a consumer, for Twitter to have to compete with other companies, and for Twitter, even for Twitter investors to have to compete with other investors, So
Yeah.
Elon Musk coming along and saying, I may destabilize what Twitter looks like right now. That's just very good for the consumers of those products. So that's a cool thing. It's a good
thing.
direction.
I agree, because I will say this in ending and let you have the last words, that unfortunately our politicians here in California and Mussolini up there, they've been stealing from the people. It happened under Brown. You can talk about the boondoggle of the train going nowhere, where all they did is steal our money and give it to themselves and friends. It was just being money laundered. At the beginning of this pandemic, it was said you couldn't buy anything from China, but Newsom bought $1.5 billion from of masks from China. It's money laundering. It just keeps stealing from the people. So I'm 100% with you. The free market solves people's problems, and people who become rich, I don't have any problem with them. The robber barons of today are the politicians. I think that's why Jefferson had said that every 25 years you need a revolution. Otherwise, those who are entrenched in power are just going to keep hoarding it to themselves. And I don't know how we get out of that. And I'm not trying to start a war here, but we do need some kind of revolution, right? I mean, because it's been happening, and we continue to see it happening. And they're trying to push these 10 things right now that will kill you. You're in Northern California, I'm in Southern California. It's going to kill us. I mean, the one thing that oh man, I could go on for days. We actually had passed by more than 2 million signatures to split California into 3 states. It would have been 3 states. But guess what? Newsom was like, oh no, it violates California constitution, because they didn't want to lose the power, because they knew that the one state, which would have been from San Francisco to LA, would have been the smallest state and had the smallest amount of money and no power. And they're like, no, we don't want to give up the power, because the other 2 states would have been red because they're conservative, and that's where they get all their money from. And it just shows you what's going on in the world today, and that people are so involved in entertainment, and people are like, oh, what have we been pushing for the last 50 years? Don't talk about politics or religion at the table. Don't talk over the dinner table with your friends. But how did this country get started? It wasn't a revolution. we call it a revolution and revolutionaries, but these people were considered turncoats, right? And they went and spoke at my favorite place. That's why I'm known as the beer ambassador. This is the Beer Money Show. I take beer money and invest it, right? But I have this thing for beer. But it was in the public houses and the taverns that the people got together and said, and it was like maybe 11, 14%, but really only 3% of them were involved in fighting. But they were all saying, we need to be free from this king who is overtaxing us and have some freedoms for us and our children. And I think that if people get back to understanding history and that it does repeat itself, and that those in power just want to ingratiate themselves, and you perfectly put it, put it concisely in a perfect picture for people on the two types of economies. There's the free market that helps people, and there's the political market that unfortunately siphons it off of us. They're what's the word I'm looking for when you have something that's feeding on something else, right?
Parasite. It's like a parasite.
Thank you. That's exactly what I was looking for. A parasite. And they're getting larger and larger. I mean, I think that they said there's more people working for the government than there are people not working for the government now. But anyways, yeah. I digress.
You use the word parasite. Use the word parasite. This when Bitcoin, for example, when there's people who become Bitcoin.
Oh, I lost your sound. Okay, there you go. You're good.
They become Bitcoin accountants. They become Bitcoin lawyers. Whatever it may be. It's important to recognize that the government regulation that produces those jobs, just because they're in the free market, that's still parasitical, right? The government has created these additional kind of almost taxes on the Bitcoin industry. Or if there's self-regulatory organizations, this too, it's regulation that doesn't come from the marketplace. It's nothing. It is simply as bad as government. You may have like a 3% better opportunity, but it's not what the marketplace wants. It's not what the consumer wants, and it's very ugly. And these are more and more being talked about in Bitcoin. And I want to thank your audience for this time. I want to thank you for this time. And no matter how bad it gets, towards the end of every regime, it gets crazy, and there's crazy stuff in the news, and you can't make sense out of what's happening. It gets so crazy. And I want to encourage your audience not to be deterred by that, to if they're not sure what to do, to lean back into their values, to say, I know these few things are true. I'm going to stick with those things. And the more you can do that, the more things make sense. You can ignore all this other nonsense happening. What are your core principles? Stick with them. I should mention, I have a website, realstevo.com, REAL. And I got some hard hitting. Oh no, you lost me again?
Just for a second, but you're back. Just say it again. Real Stevo. Real Stevo.
Realstevo.com, REALSTEVO.com. I send out hard hitting emails to people. If you don't know what to do with the face mask, especially, I got good stuff for you on that. Sign up for my email list. I want to keep in touch, keep feeding you encouraging stuff, keep feeding you hard hitting stuff. Don't share nasty links with people. Share the good stuff. We're in the middle of a war. It's a psychological war. We are winning this. We're gonna win this. I have no question about that. It's a question of how long it takes. It's a question of what obstacles we encounter in the process. But I have no question we're gonna end up on the winning side of that battle. So I'm very excited, and thank you for having me here, Mikhail.
Well, Stevo, it's been an honor and a privilege. I just wish we had done it sooner, but let's do this again. Love to have you back on. I love your attitude and your perspective. And people, please go check him out. He's not on a lot of social media stuff, so you can't follow him like you do with me. But go check it out. You can get information and send him some love. Maybe get some of his books or something like that. And Stevo, when you're ready again, let's have you back on.
Cool. Thank you very much.
All right, my friend. Well, as I always say to people on this show, get off zero and just get some Bitcoin and get some information. It doesn't take that much. I mean, there's all kinds of books. I wish there's another one I would like to encourage for my friends, but get some books, get some reading, go figure out what's going on with Bitcoin and finances. The book that I mentioned earlier, the books he mentioned, all these things, understanding how politics, religion, and money affect your life daily is important for you to know and understand. So thank you again, my friend. And we'll catch up off the line here, but I really appreciate your time, sir.
I recommend you stop record before you hang up.
Oh, I'm
I
gonna
think
stop.
that's
Yes,
a thing.
I'm doing that. I'm about to stop right now. Great call, my friend, because this is still new to me, but I'm gonna do that. Cheers.